Hey, Travis Hightower here, your Denver real estate agent. Today we're going to talk about offer strategy. So we last week talked about the process for finding the perfect house, what it takes to discover that within yourself, and then going out into the marketplace and connecting with it and finding it. Now that you've been able to look back on all of this, you've chosen the one that you want to move forward on, and you're about to submit an offer, and here we are. So going for it, once you find the one, what are you going to do? You're going to go for it, right? It's time to really dial in that offer strategy. And there's several components that make up that strategy. And the first one I want to cover are the seller's hot buttons. These are the motivations for the seller, like price, their actual motivation on why they're moving, even time frame. These are very, very important because it starts to give us insights as to what the seller needs to do and why they're selling. And with that information, we can speak to that with the offer. And that's what negotiating is all about, right? The second part of this is just asking. How easy is it just to ask the listing agent, hey, why is the seller selling? Why do they need to move? Or if we notice things as we're walking through the house, bringing those things up and saying, hey, I noticed the house is vacant. What's the seller going to do? Or if we run into neighbors as we're walking around the outside, walking around the block, we talk to them. We ask them, hey, the house down the way that's for sale, do you know anything about it? It's a simple ask, and a lot of times that can help develop the offer strategy so we can really speak to the seller. Speak to the seller with the offer, what we're presenting to them. And then to be able to put all this together, like price, motivation, time frame, being able to ask and discover from the listing agent or neighbors, we put all that together with an actual offer. We have the price that we feel works for us and the price that we want to negotiate and win with. Next to that is we actually negotiate with the seller. So once an offer is submitted, it's rarely ever just accepted. We're trying to meet somewhere in the middle. We're trying to put terms into the deal. We're trying to really negotiate and find out where we're going to land. There's a lot of strategy behind that, right? It's not just a straightforward thing where you put in a number, the seller says yes, and everyone's got the win-win deal. There's a lot of moving parts to that, and really being able to speak to the motivations, the time frame with the right price, knowing why they're selling, why they're moving, being able to submit an offer that speaks to that and negotiate to be able to put that together, that creates the win-win. And it isn't always just price. Like, there's been so many times I've written offers where the price wasn't the highest, but we won. It was because of the terms that we added, like a post closing occupancy agreement, or waiving the certain inspection rights, capping what we were going to ask for if something came up on health and safety. And sometimes in extreme cases over the last couple of years, having to do like an appraisal gap guarantee or something along those lines to really put terms into the deal to actually win it. And that creates the win-win, to be able to put the deal together and have a seller and buyer that are here and ready to close, ready to move to the next step, right? And so I wanted to also chat a little bit about examples. They're on the website, travishightower.com. Look for this recent blog post here about offer strategy, going for it, finding the house that you love, and then taking action. And look at the two examples where I talk about scenarios that are real life scenarios where we had to negotiate, where we had to win the deal a certain way. And if you think about it this way, when we're trying to uncover what the seller's hot buttons are, think about it from probably the easiest perspective. Imagine a vacant house. Like if a house is vacant, looks like it hasn't been lived in for quite a while, the refrigerator's empty, all the closets are empty, maybe even there's a huge stack of realtor cards in the kitchen. What does that say? How does that speak to us? To me, it means the seller's motivated to sell. It means that their timeline is as quick as possible. If you had a cash deal, for example, that would really speak deeply to them. A lot of certainty, a fast timeline, being able to close quickly. Those would be motivations, in my opinion, as to what the seller would really want. And that's an easy example of a vacant property. And I talk about this more in detail on the website. Again, it's travishightower.com, and you can check out this. And I cover two separate examples. And I talked about the obvious one with a vacant house. Well, there's some not so obvious stuff too, like imagine a house very well cared for, very organized, everything's in its right space, maybe even you look in the closet and it's just perfect. Shirts perfectly hung everywhere, things super organized. Well, guess what? That's like a personality trait, a way of being. And that's one of those things where you're gonna be trying to speak to that person when you're submitting an offer. That person, in most cases, is looking for certainty, right? They like things organized. They like the planning aspect of keeping their house well maintained. They don't like the idea of there being deferred maintenance on the outside or an exterior that needs a lot of work. Those things you can start to uncover as you're walking through. And those are kind of the hidden things that I wanted to share in the examples on the website of just really understanding a seller's way of being and how to speak to that person, right? Think about like the people in your life, your friends, your relationships. There's always certain types of people that we connect with, or we vibe with, or we have a special relationship with. And in a lot of cases, you can identify those types of personalities, like going to have happy hour with friends, someone that's super chatty and energetic, tons of fun, right? That's who they are. That's their way of being. You know, planning a trip, having somebody create the plan for everyone to follow. That personality is very different from the chatty person. They're a planner. They think about it into the future. They often like certainty, like to have a strategy or a plan where they're plugging along to execute that. And so the same is true with a seller, because we're all people, right? There's going to be a way of being for a seller that we want to try to speak to. And so to recap, when you go for it, when you fully commit and decide that this is the one, you take action after choosing, we want to understand the seller's hot buttons. We want to understand their price, what they're potentially looking for. We want to understand their motivation. Why are they selling? Why are they doing it? Is it a family emergency? Is it expanding the family? Is it moving out of the state? What does that look like? What's their motivation? And then their time frame. Do they want it fast? Do they want it, 90 days from now? They're building a brand new house that's going to close in 90 days and maybe they don't care as much about trying to move quickly? Or is it vacant and they're carrying 2 mortgages right now and their motivation is just to sell it and move on? And outside of just determining those hot buttons, we want to dig deeper there and ask the listing agent, ask neighbors, really discover what it is that is driving the seller to sell their house and why, right? And then also maybe you might even pick up around what the house is all about, or how great they took care of it, or how much pride they had when each summer came around and they really cared for the yard, or whatever story you might hear by just talking to the neighbors and asking. And then being able to put all this information together to submit an offer, negotiate, and then create a win-win that meets what you're looking for as the buyer. And then remember, check out the website, because there's some examples on there, a couple examples, real life examples of how deals are put together and some of the intricacies that go into it. And I could write pages and pages and pages about deals and negotiation and all of that stuff, but I tried to keep it fairly simple with bullet points and all of that. So if you have any comments or feedback, please feel free to reach out and let me know. And so I'm going to wrap it up today talking about offer strategy and when you want to go for it. And next week we're going to talk about what happens once you're under contract. It's time to celebrate, right? When you're under contract, but it's also time to manage certain deadlines and work through the contingencies that are ahead when we're working towards the close date. So Travis Hightower signing off. Thank you so much for tuning in. Look forward to speaking with you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.